dive like all coaches do during the bye. What's maybe one thing that jumped out to you is like, hey, that's something I really want to see improve the next 12 weeks?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, one thing I would say is our bye this year is so early. It's 5 weeks in. I would say you kind of have an idea who you are and what's going on. It's been a lot of moving parts for us, so it's hard to say exactly. I would say, I mean, ultimately, if you're saying what would I say we need to improve on, I would say ultimately the field goal stuff. We got to kick the ball better and make more kicks when our numbers called and asked to go out there and do that. But I think ultimately I would say the same thing I usually say all the time is like there's just a ton of room for improvement in a lot of areas. I think our guys have gone out there and played hard. We've executed some things better than other things. But we're looking forward to getting back out there again against the Cowboys. These guys do a good job, so it should be fun.
Field goal kicking. It's been a little bit of a carousel there. I think you've had 10 kickers in the building since you've been with this roster. So, is there something that's being missed in the evaluation aspect of it, or are you just having some bad luck with injuries? What would you attribute to not being able to kind of find the guy?
Yeah, I would say no. I would say there's a lot of things to the question, but I would say ultimately, like we knew when I got here, we had I mean, Prater wasn't under contract or whatever, and we didn't re-sign him, however you say that. So ultimately, we lost a good player there, and then the goal was to find the next guy, and I think that we knew that in doing that, it was going to take some time. I mean, and so we went about that process. We brought Randy Bullock in, who we thought did a nice job for us, but we were also looking for maybe better, younger, a bunch of different things, and didn't think he was a long-term answer. And so then at that point, we had an opportunity to claim Seibert. We claimed Seibert, and we felt really good about that. He started for us a year ago. He played well, and then he got injured, which is out there, unfortunately. And it's happened. It seems like it's happened more frequently around the league. I think you guys have seen that. So anyways, Seibert got injured, and then we went with Santoso, and he struggled in that game. And so then we moved on from him, and we ended up getting Riley Patterson in here. And Riley came in and did a good job. I think a year ago, our numbers or the output for that position or the production we got out of that position was better than average. Wasn't perfect. It wasn't necessarily what we were looking for, but it wasn't terrible. So then we go into training camp. We have two players we think highly of, in Patterson and Seibert. Seibert was obviously coming off an injury, and then he was playing great for us. He had a great camp. He had a better camp than Riley had for us. He was feeling great. Everything was going great. So we were excited. We thought we kind of had the answer to the question. And then ultimately, then Seibert didn't feel good. He had some discomfort. I don't know exactly how to say all that, but there's a lot to that. He had some discomfort and didn't feel great and wasn't able to go. So anyways, then at that point, we went with Everly, much like Santoso the year before, didn't go great. And then we brought in some other guys that we feel good about. I would say, we're hoping that this thing settles down. I think it can between Badgley and Ficken. And I think that whoever we end up going with will go out there and play well for us. Is it an ideal situation to be in? Obviously not, but such is life, Like, it's not like we really controlled any of it. I would say, personally, in my opinion, I think we've made the exact right call the whole way. Would we like a different outcome? Oh, yeah. We would like to hit on the next all-pro kicker, but it doesn't always turn out that way. But anyways, we'll see what happens. I would tell you that I strongly believe that it'll settle down. We'll look back at this thing at the end of the year and say, you know what, we got good production out of that position. I think we can turn it around. So it's still early in the year. When you look at percentages right now, one miss makes a big difference on the overall percentage. So when you look at it that way, I think, yeah, it's hard to swallow right now. But I would say when it's all said and done, I think it'll be better than what we're looking at right now for sure. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah, it's been a challenge. It's not been ideal, but I think we're on the right track, and we'll keep working through it. I mean, people aren't throwing out good players. So, I mean, it's not like and there's a bunch of people looking for him right now, and the later you get in the season, the harder it gets to find somebody who can come in and play at a high level. The earlier that happens, the more choices you have. But I think overall from, our decision-making process and all that, I don't regret or second-guess any of the moves we've made up to this point. And in hindsight, you would do some things differently maybe, but, we obviously don't have the benefit of, all the information. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it'll settle down here. It's a good question, and I totally get it. I think saying that there's been 10 kickers in here makes it sound worse than it is. I mean, we've had a couple different kickers. We had really 2 primarily last year, and hopefully we end up having 2 this year primarily. And it settles down, and we end up getting some productivity out of those guys.
All the way include, I know this wasn't just your decision letting Prater go, because he was a pretty good player, that obviously.
Yeah, I would say ultimately those are tough conversations. There's just so much to building a roster, I mean, it's a lot of different things that go into it, and so I would say I don't. But that's not my deal. That wasn't my decision. Ultimately, that's Brad and Dan's and those guys, and I trust them, and they're trying to rebuild a roster, and so you got to make a lot of hard decisions. But yeah, it's easy to second guess everything after the fact. But no, I don't second guess anything we've done.
Had a kicker last week who Dan wouldn't put out there for a 50-yard attempt, so. I don't know. Shouldn't your NFL kicker be able to make a 50-yard? Maybe there's some other factors there. Why?
Yeah, no. And I get your question. Should an NFL kicker be able to make a 50-yard kick? No question about it. That being said, does that mean he's going to make it 100% of the time? Well, that's a different story. So I would say every game's different, every field's different, every stadium's different, all the conditions are different. I think like in that game, truth be told, if you listen to Belichick's press conference after that game, he said, yeah, the wind was quite a factor in that game. In our decision-making process, he said it was blowing straight across the field from their bench to our bench, so I do think that wind was a factor in that game and the decision-making process there. I'm sure you're talking about when it was on the 32-yard line. We took a negative yardage play. We were in range before that play, and then that play had knocked us out of what we had talked about going into the game. But I would say just keep in mind that you word it as he can't make a 50-yard kick, and I don't think that's how we feel about that. But we do think that making a 50-yard kick in those conditions on that day, on that field, going that direction with those uprights was going to be a little bit more difficult task. So I would say the line to get in the range and all that question, I know that's popular. I would say it depends on a lot of different things, and some of it nowadays is the down and distance. Can you go for it? Are your odds better going for it? Or are they better to punt? So there's a lot of things that go into that, but I feel good about the guy that we got and the guy who will play for us Sunday, and I don't think that's a limiting factor. I think if you look at Belichick's decision-making going that direction on that field, and you go back in his history, I think you'll see that it's different on that end for him too.
You mentioned the injuries. We've seen them around the league. I know you're a guy who likes to study a lot of different aspects of the game. Is there any reason behind that?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I feel like, truth be told, there's more injuries probably at a lot of different positions. At least certainly we've gotten hit with that. But I feel like that's across the league. I don't really know the answer to that. It's unfortunate. I do know that these guys they're stronger than ever. They're more powerful than ever. They hit the ball higher, longer, further than they ever have before. Is the body the weak link, or is there a part in the body that ends up being the weak link in the chain? possibly. I don't know. It's hard to say.
You mentioned how difficult it is to find the next All-Pro, right? Tim's talking about all the time. Look at the top 5 right now, all-time field goal percentage kickers. They're active. Kicking is getting better and better and better and better. So, what have you learned, I guess, from teams discovering the Justin Tuckers of the world that go undrafted, or Matt Prater who bounces around the league for a little bit. How do you go about finding this guy that can take the college skill set and elevate it to the next level?
Yeah, I would say it's a good question. I would say, I mean, ultimately, I think that if you look at those guys, a lot of them have had a bunch of different chances. It didn't happen on their first shot. And so I think that there's some time, and most of that probably goes to just getting comfortable in the National Football League. It is a little bit different. The hashes are not as wide as they are in college, so the kick would be a little bit different than it is in the NFL or than in college. But I do think that there's also some maturity that takes place, and probably a lot of it mentally for these guys as they come into the league and they get a chance and it doesn't go as well as they wanted to, and then they get another chance and it goes a little bit better. But I would say in my past I've had a lot of success with bringing guys in. When I was in Philadelphia, we started off and we ended up getting Cody Parkey right at the cut down date. He came in and played great for us. He got hurt. And then we ended up bringing in Caleb Sturgis. He ended up playing great for us. And then he ended up getting hurt and leaving. And we brought in Jake Elliott, who ended up coming in and playing really well for us. And we felt good about that. So we were able to kind of stem the tide in the meantime and then find a really good player. So I think that's probably ultimately the goal here, is that you can keep on taking shots on guys and giving guys opportunity, and hopefully you play well enough, and then hopefully ultimately you find a guy you can stick with. I do think one of the biggest things of finding a guy, though, is at some point you have to have some patience. If you look at these guys, they all make kicks and miss kicks. They make 50-yard field goals. They miss 50-yard field goals. I think that what happens is when you win the game, it's not as big of a deal when they miss the kick. When you lose the game, then obviously those kicks get magnified. So anytime you have a team with a record like ours, you're going to look back and second guess the kick and all that all the time. And I think that winning teams go through the same challenges. They just aren't looked at exactly the same way. I have a saying in this league, the bottom line is you can't win unless you win. So ultimately we'll be answering these questions on the kicker until we start winning enough games. And then at that point, we'll probably all feel like the guy's playing well enough. And the truth is that he's probably playing about the same either way.